Hi, everyone. I'm Leah.
And I'm Ezra, and you are joining What's the Plan? And if you're joining this, you are part of a nationwide movement to stop fascism in America. And we do that via a massive, broad-based, people-powered organizing structure that is led by you all, that is led by people on the ground. And we are in the middle of this authoritarian takeover, but there are so many people all across the country who are organizing. And look, there are people out there in the world who will tell you how terrible everything is. And you know what? They're right in many ways. But we're trying to do something different here. We're not just trying to tell you just how bad everything is. We're trying to work through together, not just me and Leah, but everybody here. This is a live conversation. So in real time, we're trying to talk about what are the best strategies we can use to push back against this regime.
We do this together with you, the folks who are organizing, getting active, working in your communities, or maybe you're coming in fresh and looking for that community. That is good because democracy is not a spectator sport. If we want to beat these fascist clowns, we all have to get on the field. There is no way out of this mess that does not require millions of us to get involved, stand up, and do our part. Oh, by the way, we are married. We should mention that early. We have been running Indivisible National together since we first started it after Trump's first election in 2016. We bring our experience as former congressional staffers and do-gooder advocates to this work, but we're not the leaders of this movement. The leaders are thousands of indivisible groups all over the country, led and operated by people like you.
Again, for folks who are new, this is going to be a treat because you get a sense of just how big and boisterous and growing this movement is. Every week, I get to go through, I pick them out of a hat, new indivisible groups from across the country who are just forming just now in the last week. These are not just individuals. These are communities that are coming together and saying, I don't like what's going on. I'm going to organize. So, please give a warm welcome in the chat with your emojis. Welcome these new folks to the movement. We've got Julie, who just founded Indivisible San Geronimo Valley in Lagunitas, California. We've got Ryan from Indivisible Accelerator in Finksburg, Maryland. Sue with Edina, Indivisible in Edina, Minnesota. Welcome. I need all the Minnesotans organizing that we can get. Mary, Indivisible Kearney in Kearney, Missouri. Kaylin from Northeast Triad Indivisible in King, North Carolina. Donna, Mosier Indivisible in Mosier, Oregon. Carl just registered Nittany Indivisible in University Park, Pennsylvania. Amelia from Indivisible Nelson County in Lovingston, Virginia. Lavetta from Indivisible Aberdeen in Aberdeen, Washington. Richard from Indivisible Portage in Portage, Wisconsin. I only do 10 normally, Leah, but I give myself a bonus if we get somebody international. And we have Linda from Indivisible Bremen in Germany. There is an Indivisible Bremen in Germany. I think the last international one we had last week was from Indivisible Oaxaca. We are seeing indivisible groups pop up all over. If folks will remember, No Kings has not just been a national event. Yes, most of the protests for No Kings and for Hands Off have taken place in the United States, but there have been a lot of protests in different countries, in Western Europe, in South America, in Eastern Europe, all over, in solidarity with those of us here at home who are trying to push back against this regime. So welcome, Indivisible Bremen. We see you. We hope you have a No Kings 3 event, which I believe we'll be announcing next week, but it's coming, and we all need to stand up together. The other thing, actually, I want to welcome is just all of the new members who are joining us. Did anybody here watch Jane Fonda last night on Colbert? I was tickled by this. I thought this was great, Leah. You've actually spoken with her some. I haven't had the pleasure. Amazing. She's amazing. I'm going to quote Jane Fonda on Colbert last night. Quote, Indivisible is a wonderful organization, and it has chapters all over the country. Join Indivisible. So honorary Indivisible leader Jane Fonda, we are listening to you, and we are following your instruction. It turns out a lot of people are joining Indivisible now and starting new Indivisible groups. And last thing, Leah, I'm going to turn it over to you, but last thing, I want to extend a very warm welcome to our MAGA infiltrators. We know some of you are out there lurking, watching, planning to post these clips. We really delight in seeing these clips posted with breathless descriptions about everything that you've uncovered. Look, you found us. We're here. We organize out in the open, and that's how we do our work. So thanks for adding to our listener count. I hope you download the podcast too, wherever you can find it, wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope you learned something because look, we organize out in the open. We're proud of what we do. We're not afraid for you or anybody else to know it. Okay, that's all the intro, y'all. Let's talk about the news of the day so we can get to what we do about it and your Q&A. Leah, do you want to take over on what's happening in Minnesota?
Absolutely. Look, the reports out of Minnesota continue to be unbelievably grim. There are thousands of ICE officers armed to the teeth rampaging across the Twin Cities like an occupying force. They are staking out daycares and schools. They are tear gassing clergy and protesters. They are invading people's homes and pulling them out into the cold without warrant or cause. Personally, I had my breaking moment last night when I saw the pictures of tiny little Liam Ramos, a 5-year-old boy wearing a blue fluffy puppy hat who was detained by ICE, who tried to use him as bait against his parents, and who has now been sent to a horrific detention facility in Texas. This is what we are up against. It is Gestapo shit.
He had a Spider-Man backpack,
He had a Spider-Man backpack.
that our little boy has an identical Spider-Man backpack.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's awful. It is beyond words. And also, Stephen Miller and Donald Trump had no idea what they were going up against when they decided to invade Minnesota. Because what we have seen in this state should make you furious, but it should also inspire you. Immigrant rights organizers, labor unions, faith leaders, regular people across the state are coming together to say, fuck no, you're not doing this in our name. You're not taking our neighbors. We see parents organizing group chats, working in shifts to protect families at daycares and school drop-offs, neighborhoods who are collectively alerting each other to the presence of ICE with honks and whistles, regular people who are spending every minute of their spare time protecting and taking care of their neighbors. They killed Renee Good for going out with her whistle. What happened next? Thousands more people picked up their whistles and got out into the streets. It is a true demonstration of what is possible when we all throw in and work together and push back. Now, what is happening next? On Friday, January 23rd, Minnesotan labor, grassroots, faith institutions, they are collectively calling for a day of truth and freedom. Inside the state, no school, no work, no shopping, a stop to business as usual. Outside the state, they're asking for solidarity actions, high visibility events to echo their demands, to push corporations who've been complicit in ICE's reign of terror, to push electeds to do their jobs and stop this horror. Now, this is a really big deal. We have been talking for a year about the need to move from protest to disruption. This is the first time that a powerful coalition is coming together to really put that into action. It is the kind of escalation. No work, no shopping, no going to no school, no business as usual. It's the kind of escalation that we need to test and support as we build and flex our muscles in this resistance. So if you are in Minnesota, you know what to do. Stay home. Unless you're going, of course, to the massive protest that our own beloved Indivisible Twin Cities is helping to organize. If you are outside Minnesota, we have got up on iceoutforgood.com a full list of actions you can take in order to push the corporate actors who are behind this, and a solidarity event near you. Find it, show up. Now, I think it's really important to highlight that one of the asks coming out of Minnesota is for Congress, because while all this is happening, a funding vote is coming up on more money for ICE. Ezra, can you walk us through what's going on there?
I would love to walk us through what's going on there, Leah. Okay, y'all, what's the status of ICE? We all know, we've been talking about this for over a year. We've been saying they are bulking up, that they are hiring Proud Boys as fast as they can, that they are constructing more detention camps. Look, ICE is already the largest law enforcement agency in the history of our country. It's larger than many militaries. FBI, puny by comparison. And I said law enforcement agency. I think it is inaccurate to call ICE a law enforcement agency. ICE has as much to do with law enforcement as the mob does with waste management. ICE does not exist to enforce laws. It brands itself as a law enforcement agency to get funding, which it then uses to terrorize Americans illegally and unconstitutionally. That's what ICE is. Did folks see this whistleblower report that just came out yesterday? I mean, it is shocking stuff. It is the kind of thing that should be wall-to-wall coverage on all the news networks. Every elected official, I don't care if you're an independent or Democrat or Republican, you should be furious about this. The whistleblower report says that ICE is directing agents to break into homes without a warrant. This is written down. You can go read it. It is not hard. It's a couple pages long. You can see what they are directing agents to do. Crazy stuff. We just heard from Leah about this terror campaign from the Gestapo in America, in Minnesota. And we also know it's not just happening in Minnesota. They are expanding to other states with great fanfare. Just a couple days ago, we heard they're definitely going into Maine now, and they're going to go into a lot more states. So it's doing all this right now with money that the Republicans voted through in the big ugly bill last year. But now, right now, literally today, I think in the next hour, they're asking the House to vote for more money. So this gets to this Department of Homeland Security funding bill. Now, annual funding for ICE and agencies was set to run out on January 30th. That's 8 days from now. And Congress has been passing a lot of these little funding bills to prevent disruption. So funding different agencies piecemeal, not all at once. And the DHS, Department of Homeland Security funding bill, became a sticking point. So Indivisible joined literally hundreds of pro-democracy, immigrant rights groups, other organizations opposing funding for ICE without serious restrictions. Rosa DeLauro, she's a member of Congress from Connecticut. She was the lead Democratic member on the Appropriations Committee, and she then unveiled this funding bill for ICE and DHS that gives them more money and doesn't add any real restrictions. She presented it and said, this is the bipartisan proposal. This is what we think we should do. It didn't meet any of the requirements that either Indivisible or immigrant rights groups or pro-democracy groups were asking for. So she got a ton of blowback, y'all. This is just in the past couple of days, ton of blowback. And she immediately started waffling on her own support for her own negotiated bill. And it wasn't just her. We heard from Senator Chris Van Hollen, Senator Murphy, Senator Padilla, Senator Gallego, Maxwell Frost in the House, ton of other House members. The list that I gave you, what you'll notice that those aren't just all lefties. Those aren't just all progressives. That's an ideologically diverse group of Democrats who say, well, this is bad. We should not be funding ICE right now. And that's good. We should be cheerleading them. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, he said he personally opposed it. Schumer has been nowhere. I mean, I don't know where Schumer, maybe he's on vacation. I don't know what he's doing. He's not talking about this. I will say we were holding out hope that Hakeem Jeffries would whip the vote. That is his role. That is his role as Democratic leader. He says, hey, Democratic caucus in the House, we're all voting against that. That's how you unify. He had not yet committed to doing that or not doing that. We just got word literally as we were coming on this call from our advocacy team that he's not whipping, that all members of Democratic House leadership are saying, we're not going to vote for this. But Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House, is declining to whip his caucus to vote in unison against the House DHS funding bill. That's the reality. I'm giving it to y'all in real time. So let me tell you about things that we know and things that we don't know. We know a vote is coming this afternoon, Thursday, January 22nd. I think it could come while we are on the call with y'all. We know that Republicans are going to vote for the House bill in near lockstep. I would expect basically everyone, if not everyone, to vote for it on the Republican side because they just back Trump in everything he does and don't exercise any kind of oversight because they are either fascists themselves or they're cowards or they're both. But because of that basic dynamic, we know it's going to pass the House, y'all. That's a foregone conclusion. The fight ultimately is not in the House for this. The House, the Democrats are in the minority. They're not going to be able to stop it. We didn't know if Hakeem Jeffries was going to whip and try to unify. It's bad that he's not. No other way to look at it. It is bad that Democrats can't say in a unison, with a unified voice, fuck a secret police. We don't fund that. Instead, you are going to see some Democrats vote for it. Guarantee you. There are going to be some Democrats who vote for it. How many is the question now? That's the question. How many Democrats decide to side with Trump, decide to side with Stephen Miller, decide to side with the Republicans to vote for additional secret police funding? We don't know that. We do not know that. We also don't know what's going to happen in the Senate. This is a funding bill, which means it needs 60 votes to pass the Senate. Now, Democrats are in the minority. We hear a lot of Democrats saying, what do you want me to do? We don't have any power. We're in the minority. They are in the minority, but this requires 60 votes. So Democrats can indeed block this. They can say, we are not going to vote for one more dime for ICE. That's what we've heard from some Senate Democrats. Gallego, Chris Van Hollen, Chris Murphy, Alex Padilla. Some Democrats are saying that. It is not yet the unified Democratic position. Now, I don't know if Trump invokes the Insurrection Act. I don't know what additional atrocities we find out ICE is committing between now and that vote. But this is a live fight, y'all. Do not treat this as a foregone conclusion. Do not lower your expectation to the level of leadership we're seeing from Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer. They are not going to lead this. You are. You all are. We all are. The Minnesotans are. Us hosting solidarity events, us calling our members of Congress and showing up at their office. They are all looking around to see how pissed we are. They're trying to look around and see, are we going to face immediate pressure? So it is up to us to demonstrate that pressure. So What I would ask for you, if you're watching this call right now, you might have time to call your member of Congress. I would encourage you to do that. If you're listening to this podcast, it's either passed or it hasn't passed by Friday morning. But that doesn't mean the fight is over. If you have a House Dem who voted against this bill, make a big deal about supporting them. Really do. Make a big ruckus. Say, thank them for their leadership and make clear to everybody around that they did a good thing. Members of Congress don't always get that positive feedback. Be that positive feedback. On the other side, if you have a House Dem who voted for this, you should be loudly angry because Senate Dems are going to be looking at what happens to them. I would recommend not just expressing your anger in a phone call to them. I wouldn't just write an op-ed. I wouldn't just show up at their congressional office. Hell, I would recommend identifying a credible primary challenge to that House Democrat. And I don't say this for everything. I do not think that is the go-to. But if a Democrat in this moment is unable to unify with the rest of the caucus to vote against funding for a secret police force that is supporting this lawless fascist regime, they should be thrown out of the party. This is not ideological. This isn't left versus right. This isn't progressives versus moderates. We need a big tent party. I believe that. Some districts are hard to win. Some are more conservative. We need a wide variety of perspectives on education and tax and immigration and everything under the sun. We don't need cowards, y'all. You do not need cowards in your party to win. We need fighters. And if we collectively are unwilling to challenge failed leadership, we're just going to get more of it. But lucky for us, this fight's not over, and we're in the middle of primary season. So we're going to have a lot of opportunities in front of us to build a stronger Democratic Party that fights back. The goal for us right now is just to show Congress that this isn't some minor side issue, but that we are all paying attention and there will be immediate support or immediate political repercussions for a bad vote here. So if you're like, I don't know these issues or I don't know exactly how to call, that's cool. You don't have to be an expert in all this. Indivisible.org has everything you need. You can start yelling about this wherever you are. And you can also find information about what Leah was talking about, these ICE Out for Good protests Friday, January 23rd. So showing up in Minnesota, showing up around the country. Whew, Leah, that was a lot. Did I miss anything there?
I think you landed it.
I might have landed. Okay. So this is for the benefit of the podcast. And now, Leah, let's jump into our favorite part of the call, the Q&A. Everybody, we're going to Q&A. Please submit your questions, vote for your questions. We take them top to bottom, the top rated questions. They can be critical, they can be supportive, they can be random. We just go through them and we talk about how we build a pro-democracy movement in this country. Leah, would you take this first one? Starling Star asks, have you considered making Stephen Miller the poster boy of fascism? I think shifting messaging focus from Trump to Stephen Miller would be especially effective now with ICE running wild. He is charmless, cruel, widely disliked, and unlike Trump, doesn't have 1/3 to 1/2 of the country in his pocket. He is the leading light of the anti-immigrant, anti-democracy efforts. He's a true and perfect villain. I like where you're going, Starling. Leah, thoughts?
Well, my first thought is you are 100% correct. He is perhaps the most unappealing and sinister figure in American politics right now, and a day in which more people are hearing more from or about Stephen Miller is a good day for us. So, aligned on that, I do think we have to be realistic about exactly how much different factions of the American public are paying attention at any given time and how deep we're going to be able to get with them. And we have to have like a strategy about why we would go for specific figures and not others. Now, when Elon Musk was running Doge and was going about, taking a chainsaw to U.S. government functions, there was a very important strategic imperative, and there was a specific ability to protest him in locations around the country that created the optimal conditions for a strategy around, can we fracture Donald Trump and Elon Musk apart? Can we break up this relationship between the president of the United States, the Republican Party, and the richest man in the world? And that was a moment where, a lot of people were able to flood into Tesla dealerships and collectively protest what Elon Musk was doing to the federal government and really toxify what was happening in a way that actually successfully fractured that relationship. Now, Stephen Miller, I'm less optimistic about being able to get him out because he's functionally Trump's brain. He's functionally controlling the government. I think it's perfectly good to elevate him in our commentary. I think it's good to talk about Donald Trump and Stephen Miller making decisions rather than just Donald Trump, because we should be real that, when we look at something like Minnesota being invaded, that is the Stephen Miller plan. And also, I don't want us to take our foot off of the direct effort to brand Trump either, because fundamentally he's the one on the ballot, and often he's the one that lower information voters are going to need to know about.
I agree with 80% of that, Leah. I think the place where I would push a little bit harder, I think Stephen Miller should be investigated, prosecuted, and imprisoned. It is very clear that he should be. And in order for that to happen, Democrats who want to take the House of Representatives and the Senate need to start saying they are going to investigate, prosecute, and imprison people who violate the Constitution and break laws. And I believe Stephen Miller is doing that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the investigation shows that he hasn't. Everything that I've seen does not point to that. And I would welcome a thorough investigation of every member of this regime who is currently breaking the law and violating the Constitution. And I do think he is a very unsympathetic figure because he is a Bond-like villain. So I think we can do both. And there should be a pantheon of these villains who are saying they are breaking the law, they are violating the Constitution, they are making your life worse, and we're going to investigate the hell out of them as soon as we have subpoena power. No?
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I think it's two different tracks.
Okay.
One is what are the messages and what are the things that we're focusing on in order to get the maximal amount of broad public pushback on the Trump administration's policies and win the midterms. And then the other is what is the agenda for accountability afterwards that makes the next generation of Stephen Millers and heritage institution hacks say, oh, I don't want to do anything like what happened in the second Trump administration because I don't want to go to jail. Those are two very important questions. I think they are a little separate, though.
Okay, that's a good point. They are a little separate. Okay, Molly asks, I continue to be perplexed by moderate Republicans. I think we should put moderate in quotes, but moderate Republicans' refusal to stand up to Trump. Ezra, you have talked about them feigning concern at times. You have said if they are truly concerned about the current administration, they would switch parties. If not switch parties, at least vote against him. Why don't they? Could it be that they are truly afraid of as Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski suggested in an interview with the New York Times last June, Murkowski said, quote unquote, retribution is real. I believe what I've said in the past is if any Republican had an ounce of integrity, they would have switched parties over a year ago, probably over 8 years ago. What this regime is doing is indefensible. You call yourself a public servant and then you allow the regime to operate not just without oversight, but with your support in Congress, fueling the flames that are being spread by this regime. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in seven-dimensional chess here. I don't think you have to get that complicated. I think the Republicans are a mix of, again, they are supportive fascists who appreciate what Trump is doing, or they are cowards. And I would put Lisa Murkowski at best in the coward column. Retribution is real. That is bullshit. If you are too scared to actually vote your conscience and do your job as a Republican, get the fuck out of Congress, y'all. Let somebody else who actually has some courage do their work. You're worried that there's going to be retribution, so you're allowing a fascist to do things you disagree with? That's not an excuse. That is embarrassing. That is embarrassing, and you should be defenestrated from Congress in the next election.
I would say basically the same thing, but retribution is real. Fear of retribution is real, and it's not an excuse.
Yeah.
You took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. Honor your oath.
Agree. Okay, Leah, really, you take the next one. I've gone on like 3 rants, and we're just early in. Okay, Susan, Indivisible used to say that it's more effective to call members of Congress than to send them email, particularly if you're only signing your name to a pre-written message. Recently, however, it seemed like more of your calls to action have been giving us tools for emailing. Is email the more effective choice now, or are you trying to get phone-phobic people to do the actions? Great question, Susan. Good practical question.
The short answer is we're going with an all-of-the-above approach. The way that a congressional office logs information that it gets is basically if you are a constituent, they've got the ability to file away everything that you contact them about. And so functionally speaking, an email that gets effectively filed into the right issue is the same as a phone call, right? So in each case, what happens is you contact the office, you say, I'm very concerned about the bill to save the wild horses, and I want it to pass. They file it under wild horses, yay, or wild horses, nay. Oh my gosh, I did not even mean to do that. This is real. This is a real life thing. We had a lot of people calling about wild horses when I was in Congress.
That's right. There was good advocacy on that issue.
It was really intense. Yeah, that stayed with me. But Point being, when you email, the same thing happens. Someone looks at the email, they say wild horses yay or wild horses nay, depending on whether how you called, and that all goes into the tally that goes to the elected official around how are calls running. Are more people in favor of wild horses or against wild horses, et cetera, et cetera. So there's not really a functional difference. I will say that phone calls are logged in real time, whereas emails tend to be batched. I want to double check that because it's possible that these fancy newfangled folks have a fancier system than we had. But long story short, phone calls tend to have a little bit more immediacy. But if you can only do an email or, contacting people via fax, I guess, do that instead.
I do want to delineate between forms of advocacy that are private between you and the member of Congress's office and forms of advocacy that are intended to alert your community that something is going on. So an email or a call or a letter, all of those are ways for you to say, I'm a constituent, please take my information that I feel this way. And that can be valuable. That can be valuable. But if your member of Congress is not listening to you, if they are not factoring in your consideration, if they vote for this DHS bill, do not privately express your discontent. Then it is time for public expressions of discontent. And that means writing op-eds, getting your Indivisible group or 5051 group or Move On Friends or whoever is your advocacy community out to go to their district office and very publicly saying, hey, everybody, this guy or gal isn't with us. Because if they're not listening to you, it doesn't make a lot of sense to just talk to them. You got to talk to everybody else. Okay, Constance asks, has anyone else been thinking about a federal tax strike? The executive branch is not using our money as it has been allocated by our elected officials. This could be a great way to slow walk to a general strike. Leah, I'd love you to answer both of these things because we talk about, we've heard a lot of questions about tax strike over the last several months, and also we hear a lot about general strike, and we have a theory that's playing out right now about how we get to a general strike.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is that we are not encouraging and would discourage tax refusal as a strategy for a couple of reasons. I think first, the federal government is very large. The federal government has the ability to run massive amounts of deficit spending. The kind of volume that would be involved in any kind of tax effort actually making a difference to the ability of the federal government to operate is kind of mind-boggling. And so it goes in the category of, a pretty dramatic and serious act of civil disobedience for a fairly limited return, if any. I hear versions of this as well that are about blue states withholding funding. Similar challenges there. Blue states don't actually kind of collect everybody's money and then send it to the federal government in the form of taxes. It's a direct transaction between you and the federal government. So a lot of the theories around kind of could blue states collectively refuse, similar kind of logistical and strategic issues. Now, what I hear in this question is, okay, but how are we actually doing something bigger than what we've done so far, right? They're invading American cities and running massive racial profiling campaigns. What can we do that moves beyond the one-day protest, that moves into broader and deeper disruption? And I think, again, I would point to this Minnesota day of action tomorrow or day of inaction, depending on where you are and what you're doing, as an example of the kind of thing where we need to really lean in if we are going to collectively escalate on any timeline in the future. Because what they're doing is they're saying, can we actually, in a place that's well organized, that's got a lot of folks across the spectrum working together really closely, can we actually collectively really say it's no business as usual for one day? And can we, in doing so, put a set of corporations who've been complicit in these actions, who've been complicit in ISIS invasion, on notice and make them start shifting their risk calculus, their profit calculus, and how they operate? That is the kind of action that is necessary in order to escalate to anything like a bigger or broader public act of disruption. So what I would say is, lean in to support Minnesota wherever you are right now, and that is going to be the kind of path that we use to figure out what's possible next.
See, this is This is how Leah has become as I see it, the leading strategic thinker in the pro-democracy movement at the national level, sitting between a lot of different tensions within this broad movement and providing really sound advice. It's not all.
You're a little biased, though.
I'm just a little bit biased, but we're lucky to have good strategic leads here. Okay, Debbie Bruel asks, Mountain Action Indivisible, welcome Mountain Action Indivisible in Colorado. Is it enough for our senators to publicly state, I oppose any more funding for DHS until they put more restrictions on ICE? Or should we insist that they commit to the specific list of restraints? The last thing I want is for our group to thank our senators for standing strong and then find that they voted in favor of a bill with only puny restrictions on ICE. Debbie, I love this question because this is a sophisticated look at how do we use our constituent power. And what you're pointing to is something very real, which is there is nothing members of Congress like more than giving a forceful, fiery speech about how they agree with you. And the Democrats, it doesn't matter where they are on the ideological spectrum, they will say, damn that Trump, bad guy. He's doing bad stuff. Ah, darn it. We don't like it. And then they go and vote for his nominees sometimes. And then they go and vote for his secret police force. So I think you're asking a good question here, which is, okay, but so what is our ask? How are we holding our members of Congress accountable? For this specific fight right now, there is one deal on the table. There is one deal on the table. It is this Department of Homeland Security funding deal that gives more money for ICE. Stephen Miller loves it and puts basically no restrictions on them. So the ask right now on January 22nd and January 23rd is vote against the DHS funding bill. If you vote for it, you're voting for more ICE funding with very few restrictions. If you vote against it, you're currently on our side. We are trying to build a broad camp of no, so that we can then negotiate better restrictions. So I would advise you, you do not have to get into the details of what about this restriction or that restriction, or does it meet 70% of what we're asking for and we should support it. Don't worry about it. We don't need to get there. Right now, the political question in front of your representatives and your senators is yes or no. We are a no on the DHS funding bill. That's what we want to see. But thank you for digging in, because one of the frustrating things that I saw earlier was Rosa DeLauro, who was the lead negotiator I mentioned on the Appropriations Committee. She's issued a ton of fiery statements against ICE. She hates ICE. She'll let you know. And then, this kind of got all wonky. I don't know. She hates ICE, and she'll let you know. But then after she issues those, she puts together this funding bill. So I would highly recommend, don't just pay attention to what your representatives or senators are saying. Pay attention to what they are actually voting on. That's what you actually care about. So great question, Debbie. Really appreciate it. Michael Herman asks, I'm an independent living in West Virginia, politically homeless because I strongly oppose Trump and Republicans, but also disagree with some progressive policies. Will Indivisible be a Big Ten organization that welcomes moderates and centrists, or is it strictly for progressives? Thanks for being here, Mike. Actually, really, thanks for being here. I appreciate you being in this space and trying to explore where you belong. Leah, do you want to talk?
Well, yes, I do want to talk. I think this is a great question, and I'm going to take a step back and talk a little bit about our guiding premises for the moment we're in. So forgive me, I'm gonna do the political science thing. When we think about what we are seeing, which is a very swift democratic backsliding, right? A moment when there is a would-be authoritarian trying to consolidate power in this country. One of the frameworks that I find really helpful is to think about the need for a no coalition and a yes coalition. Both of these are important, and they both kind of have to be building at roughly the same time, which is confusing. The no coalition is about everyone who can collectively come together to say no. It is, anybody, it does not matter what your politics are, where you come from, what's going on. It's everyone who can say this is not okay. When we build something like a No Kings protest in partnership with folks all across the movement, with civil rights actors, with labor, with faith, with veterans, what we're trying to do is say, we can all agree on no kings. We're going to come together collectively, and we're going to push back on this administration, and we're going to hold open civic space for everyone who can collectively mobilize. So that's what a no coalition is. And we see ourselves as playing a really important part of that no coalition. And we often find that indivisible spaces can serve and function on a local level as that part of that no. And also, the way that you ultimately get out of this situation, the way that you ultimately move past defeat and structurally shift how authoritarianism is able to work in this country, you got to have yes ideas. You've got to have a policy agenda. You got to have things people believe in that make them reinvest in the democratic process. And ultimately, you got to move those things in a way that makes people believe in democracy again. You've got to reach for accountability in a way that is actually going to shift and change the incentives of future would-be authoritarians. I often say that Indivisible is not necessarily, we think of ourselves as progressive, but what is actually more important in this moment is not how far left or right you are on the left-right axis. It's how much you think we're in an emergency that requires collectively coming together to use everything that we've got to stop these guys and to build something better. And so, Michael, I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if that makes you more or less likely to show up to the next Indivisible meeting. But fundamentally, I would say if you can see yourself in either the No Coalition or the Yes Coalition, I hope your local Indivisible group is a good home for you.
That's right. And thank you for organizing in West Virginia. I'm from a rural town in Texas, and we need more people who are choosing to not just fall in line behind the Republicans, but fight for something better. Christine asks, how do we respond when judges let ICE pepper spray and tear gas peaceful protesters and DHS lets them conduct home invasions with only administrative warrants? Are our Know Your Rights campaigns and protest trains being purposefully subverted because they were working? Should we protest with an attorney or our local police present? Christine, this is a tough question because basically you're asking, what do we do if they just don't follow the law? What do we do if they just violate the Constitution and they appear to not care? My initial response here is they do care. They are not operating from a place of strength. They hope that public outrage will not be sufficient to push back, but ultimately they're bullies, Christine. They are bullies. And a bully picks on people smaller than them, people who they perceive to be weaker than them. They are weaker than us. They do not have all the power. There are more of us than there are of them. We just have to organize that pressure. And what we've seen repeatedly over the course of the last year, and even back the course of the last 9 years of organizing against this fascist buffoon, is that when we sufficiently rally public opinion against, he cowers in the corner. He chooses a different target. He looks for the next win. That's why you see him turning from target to target, trying to test the limits of his power. So I wish I could tell you, it's going to be fine. They'll follow the Constitution. They're not going to fucking follow the Constitution. They're not doing it now. I wish I could tell you they're not going to break laws. They're obviously going to break laws. They're breaking laws now. But I can tell you they're scared of our organizing. They're scared of our massive, peaceful, but insistent organizing in support of communities under threat. That is what works. But Leah, any specific comments on her questions about attorney or local police or other aspects?
Well, I would just add, we're in a backfire moment. We have seen a massive escalation in political violence, and that's what we should call this. This is political violence, from invading a place that does not want them, to murdering Renee Good, to the ongoing tear gassing and attacks on protesters and on civil society. What we are seeing is a massive escalation in political violence. And we actually know some stuff about how you make that backfire for them, right? You name what is happening, you expose what is happening, you hold it up to the light for as many people to see as possible, and you interpret it for a broader audience. Because acts of political violence like the murder of Renee Good, that's one of those moments when folks who don't necessarily pay a ton of attention to politics, maybe didn't have much of a formed opinion on ICE before, they poke their heads up and they say, what the hell is happening here? ICE just shot a mother in the face. Oh, my God. And that's the moment when we collectively come in and we say, let's talk about all of the victims of ICE. Let us talk about all of the people who have died in ICE custody for lack of medical care or because of violence by ICE. Let's talk about the ways in which they are harming and ransacking communities on an ongoing basis. And a lot of people are here and open to listening in a moment like that. So I would encourage you to see what is happening here as them pressing the limits of what they can get away with and trying in doing so to suppress dissent, but actually activating, and we've seen this over the last 2 weeks, activating the cycle of backlash that's going to make us more powerful in the long run. Like I said in the opening, right? Renee Good and Becca Good, they came in with whistles to watch and help their neighbors. So many more people have picked up whistles and gone out because of what they did and because of what they have learned about ICE's violent cruelty and lawlessness.
Mm-hmm. Leslie asks, related question, Leslie from Neponset Valley Progressive, sorry if I'm butchering that, but Indivisible group outside of Boston. Right now, many of us are asking our representatives in Congress to push for an appropriations bill that puts serious restrictions on the behavior of ICE and Border Patrol. But we already have laws that put serious restrictions on them, and Chrissy Noem and Greg Bovino simply break the law and then lie about it. What good will demanding restrictions on DHS do for us?
I'll take that one. Well, look, I think there is a very hard reality here, which is that as long as these folks believe that their best strategy is to continue to escalate the violence, the attacks, the deployments of ICE, they're going to continue to do so. They have demonstrated 1,000 ways from Friday that they do not care about following the law or being seen to follow the law. That is super clear. And also, simultaneously, we're actually in a moment where what we need to do is not just push back right now, but also gather and document and create the structures through which we will push back over a longer period of time, right? There's not an immediate fix. There's no one simple, law or bill that will stop everything that ICE is doing. And also, it matters whether people are very clearly being asked to break the law on an ongoing basis. It matters to a lot of individual ICE officers exactly how likely it is that they're going to get prosecuted when all this is over. And so having more and better restrictions on the books helps strengthen our hand for the next round of pushes on these folks, where we actually have a clear grounding and saying that was illegal, that was illegal, that was illegal for the next round of accountability. That would be my answer. I think that we should all be crystal clear that there's no simple solution that's going to check ICE tomorrow. Even if we were able to successfully stop this additional funding, the administration will pull money from other accounts. They've already got funding from the One Big Beautiful Bill. There are ways in which they will continue to run ICE as a lawless paramilitary force as long as they think they can get away with it. What we're doing is creating the political conditions in which they can't get away with it, and in which all these actors are starting to worry about their own, freedom and the implications for having broken the law during this time.
That's right. I will say one of the most frustrating things I hear from some folks on our side, from Democratic lawmakers in some cases, is, well, if we do that, if we confront the regime in some way, if we put restrictions, they'll just do this other thing. If we put a fight up against the Department of Homeland Security, they'll just abolish the filibuster and pass it. If we try to make a big deal about the big ugly bill, then they'll just implement it anyway and pass it over our heads. If we try to use what little power we have, they have more. So what's the point? And the point is to make them do it. To make them do the things that are deeply unpopular, in some cases illegal and unconstitutional. Pass a bill saying that you can't have a secret police force at the local level, at the state level. They might try to fight it in court. They might violate it on the ground. Make them do that then. Make them do that. We cannot accept, well, can't win, don't try. Because if that is our orientation right now, they've already won. They have already won. We've got to put up a fight. And we've got to make sure that they know that they're meeting resistance wherever they go. And that's true. I don't need to tell y'all that. You're doing it on the ground. I don't need to tell that to people in Minneapolis. You're doing it on the ground. We need to tell that to our Democratic lawmakers who are telling us to register and to go vote instead of telling us what they're going to pass to actually protect us. Peg says, Peg from Indivisible, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. I love the organizing and educating and inspiring of Indivisible and Red, Wine, and Blue and Women's March and Working Families Party, 5051, ACLU, Move On, Surge, etc. But it feels like a fragmented approach to resistance. How can we cross-pollinate things like call campaigns and or letter campaigns as well as big protests to improve our impact and increase our visibility?
It's a great question, and I am on the email list of everybody there, and so I understand why that sense of fragmentation might come about. It's like which thing do I do this week? Which thing do I do next week? Who's involved in this? Who's involved in that? What I would say is I actually think there's a lot of really good coordination across this set of folks around what is the strategy? What are we all pushing towards? And there's an understanding that we can't all do the same thing at the same time, or else we are collectively going to burn our own organizations out and not be able to nimbly seize opportunities as they come up. I'm going to give just a quick example of that from the last couple of weeks. It's been 3 weeks in January. It's been 3 weeks in January. But shortly after the new year, when Donald Trump launched a completely crazy attack on Venezuela, kidnapped President Maduro, there was a need for an immediate, rapid response. And Move On stepped in, did a lot of really intentional, thoughtful organizing around how do we have a big pushback against this, shocking act of war. And that was great. And also within 24 hours after that, Renee Good was shot. And we were able to jump forward and say, okay, everyone, we're going to do vigils around the country for Renee Good. There's real value in different organizations being able to say, I've got the ball and I'm running with this right now. And, collectively, like we can amplify each other's efforts, but having one or two that really are in the lead and run on something can be really good for being able to actually jump on all of the things that we collectively need to. Now, there are moments when we are really all throwing in together. I cannot stress enough that when you get to a No Kings event, there are an enormous number of folks from across labor unions and progressive organizations who are all working behind the scenes to ensure that those events are nonviolent, are safe, the hosts are well supported, that we're promoting them effectively. That really is an incredible cross-ecosystem all-in effort. Similarly, when it comes to an election, we're all in and we're all pushing really hard. But in between, when there are different efforts, I really think it's actually a positive that we all try some different things and we see what takes off and we jump in if it takes off, or we try something else.
Yeah. Bev asks, experts warn U.S. in early stages of genocide against trans Americans. So this is a link to a Lincoln Institute piece. Genocide scholars say policies targeting transgender Americans match early warning signs of mass atrocity. Bev goes on, the famous picture of Nazis burning books. They're burning Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld's pioneering research into trans people. I don't know why it's doing that. Sorry. I'm trans. I'm scared. My chapter, Indivisible San Francisco, is challenging primary candidates, including on trans rights. We're sick of every budget bill having trans repression riders, or that a few Democrats have voted for a bill to make providing gender-affirming care a felony. And we're still praying that Democrats have the spine to filibuster in the Senate. Question now, what is the most effective way to get where they honestly stand and their level of ignorance, ask about the controversial sub-issues, sports and kids, and get a strong ally among Mamdani in the primary? Do we push them all to take strong, I assume a strong stance? I think that the short answer is yes, you should push them all to take a strong stance. There is a framework for some political consultants in D.C. that says the smart way to fight the fascists is to throw trans kids under the bus, or the smart way to fight the fascists is to throw immigrants under the bus, that the way we win is by throwing more vulnerable populations to the wolves, because then we demonstrate how quote-unquote reasonable and moderate we are. I think that's a load of bullshit. I don't think it's just morally wrong, to be clear. I think it is strategically deeply misguided. And what it does, in addition to directly harming individuals around the country, is it fractures our own damn coalition and robs us of the moral arguments we need to make in this moment against a fascist force in the White House. So I think absolutely you should be pushing your Democratic representatives to not think of this as an easy thing that they can throw away, that this population is expendable, that we do not need to stand up for them, that there are no political ramifications for doing so. We need to treat an attack on one like an attack on all right now. Trump's entire play is the authoritarian play, which is a divide and conquer tactic. You identify the subgroup of the population that you think people won't stand up for, and you target them. And then you target the next one, and then you target the next one, and then you target the next one. And there's these fucking political consultants out there that say the smart move to convince middle America to vote for Democrats is to throw those people under the bus. I think is so damaging to the Democratic brand and our ability to win, not to mention the negative effects it has. Now, I'm just repeating myself, but I think you're on the right track here. Can I say, Bev? I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you not to be scared. I think it's reasonable to be scared in this moment. What I can tell you is the Indivisible movement is behind you. We are not in any way throwing any community under the bus in order to execute on some kind of strategy to build a political coalition that can defeat Trump. That's a losing strategy. The winning strategy is to unify and fight back. Anything else on that, Leah?
No.
Okay.
That's right. I'm with you.
Vicky asks, I got this from JQuo. There was no realistic way to stop ICE funding in 2026 through the regular appropriations process or a government shutdown. I feel this is a very important point that the appropriators never said was already a hard fact, and we're only hearing about it after the deal was made. It's extremely frustrating that the money for ICE was already appropriated in the big ugly bill, and that's OBBB, and nobody on the Democratic side highlighted that fact. So how will Congress be able to claw that money back? This, Leah, just to provide a little bit of framework for this, the Big Ugly Bill, or the BBB that passed last year, provided a massive amount of funding for ICE. So there is some truth to this, that ICE has a shit ton of money that they can do with what they want, regardless if Congress passes more money. That is true. And also, Democrats shouldn't be passing more money for ICE. Both of those things are true. Democrats do not have to vote for a DHS bill. But Leah, to the question of how do we claw that money back?
Well, I just want to add one comment on that as well, because I do think we're getting into a specific move that you sometimes see elected Democrats do, which is to get really wonky about technicalities about what's going on and be like, oh, it's not extra money here because that money was actually moved in this bill and et cetera. And show a lot of spreadsheets and be like, here are all the things that you're not getting because we're the experts and we know appropriations and on and on. This is a specific move in order to confuse and reduce the anxiety and the anger that folks are directing at their elected officials. It's like it's too complicated, you wouldn't understand kind of move.
Yeah.
And it's really important collectively that we reject that, because they're playing on this widely held sense that a lot of people have that like, oh, I'm not a professional politician, I'm not an expert, I don't know what's going on, I guess I'm just going to back off and walk away. And you don't actually have to be an expert on any of this stuff right now. The only thing you need to know is that it is absolutely fucking crazy to send more money to ICE while they are invading and occupying and mounting a massive racial profiling campaign across an American city. It's actually not more complicated than that.
It's really not more complicated than that. I think some people can be like, then what the hell are they doing? Why aren't Democrats just unifying? And look, I think here's the most sympathetic version of the story they are telling themselves. It's not that they love Trump. It's not that they secretly are supporting ICE. The version of politics in the heads of Democratic politicians who are voting for ICE in this moment, it looks something like this. Immigration is a loser issue for Democrats. Yeah. This is an immigration issue, not a fascist issue, not protecting our communities issue. It's an immigration issue. People do not trust Democrats on immigration. Therefore, the more we talk about ICE or DHS or CBP or any immigration issue, the less likely we are to win the election. In order to win the election, we want this to go away, and we want to talk about healthcare. We want to talk about jobs. That's the advice that many political consultants are giving to a Hakeem Jeffries, to a Chuck Schumer, to some of these Democrats who are running. That's their framework. I think that advice makes sense in some former version of politics. In like the 1990s, when we lived in a different media ecosystem, you can make that argument. I still would have disagreed with it then, but I would have understood it. In this environment, where we have a fascist who is demolishing the Constitution and is terrorizing our communities with a secret police force, it's batshit insane to hold on to that framework. So I want people to understand, it's not that these folks are cowards. It's not that these folks are just, bought off by I don't know, ICE funders or something. It's that their framework for the current moment and for politics is wrong, at least from my point of view. We have spent the last year trying to advocate and push them in the right position, y'all. We orchestrated 3 of the 5 largest protests in American history. Hands off. No Kings 1, No Kings 2. 2.5 weeks after No Kings 2, we had the best election night in a decade, with the returns in Mississippi, in Georgia, in New Jersey, in New York, in California, all over, rejecting the regime in the middle of a shutdown that we had to convince them to drive into to try to protect healthcare. We were winning with these fights, and still they would surrender. And still their knee-jerk reaction is, we don't want to talk about these issues. At this point, this is why you hear me talking about primary so much. It is not because I have an axe to grind against individual members. It's because I believe we need leadership in Congress that understands the moment we're in. And if they're not listening to the largest protests in American history, and they're not looking at the polls saying that ICE is deeply unpopular, and they're not listening to Joe Rogan, of all people, who is with us on this, and instead are voting for more Gestapo funding, I'm sorry. Thank you for your service. We need somebody else now. And so if you are frustrated with where the Dems are, don't just point fingers at leadership. It's not just a Chuck Schumer problem or just a Jeffries problem. You can be frustrated with them, but it's a Democratic caucus problem that you solve by electing new leaders through the primary process. This is a healthy process. And we're going to win some of these. We're going to lose some of these. And when it comes to the general election, it's going to be a Democrat versus a fascist. And we'll line up behind the worst Democrat instead of lining up behind the fascist. That's clear. But the primaries are the place for us to have that debate. And we got to have that debate.
I want to briefly answer the actual question that was asked.
Why would you want to do that, Leah?
About how you claw back the funding. Because I do think that we're circling back with a strategic rationale, however confusing it was that we got here, which is we're pretty far away from having the political coherence within the Democratic Party to successfully claw back the massive, massive gobs of money that were given to ICE via the One Big Beautiful Bill. That is going to take a bunch of time, and it is going to take a bunch of accountability work. And some of that is going to be primaries. Some of that is going to be accountability in the form of us contacting our representatives and pushing them on what they've done. But what we've got to do collectively is move the center of gravity in the Democratic Party so they understand that this whole maybe I'll just hide under the bed and hope that this issue passes me by strategy is not an option, and that they actually need to have a forward-leaning answer to what are you going to do about the fact that there is a lawless, unaccountable agency that's running around operating as Donald Trump's secret police. What are you going to do about it?
That's right. Michelle has a good question to end on. And I think it's a good frame for much of the organizing this year. This seems like a perfect moment to reclaim red, white, and blue. Even if we don't feel the love for our nation right now, waving the flag or wearing our nation's colors provides a powerful, visceral image that would galvanize a lot of people. It's also an image that would be tough for the administration to spin. Masked thugs versus a group of confident, brave Americans. This moment demands strong optics. What better image? I will just say, I was very proud of First No Kings. Leah and I closed out the rally in Philly. There were 100,000 people there. And how do we close it out? We told a story of Flag Day, the history of the flag, and recited the Pledge of Allegiance. 100,000 people reciting Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States, and embraced what we believe this country stands for, did not give it up. And I think for the 250th anniversary of the founding of this country, a country that was founded by rejecting autocratic rule, by rejecting military forces that were invading the homes of Americans. I mean, my God, y'all, this is our country. We do not play second fiddle to any fascist force in this country. They do not own the history. They do not own the Constitution. They're tearing it up. They do not respect our laws. We should not be shy about wrapping ourselves in the flag and standing up for what America should be. We do not have to defend everything America has done to be proud of what we're trying to make it. We can do that together. I think this is a year to do that. So we've done that a lot in the No Kings organizing. That's been a big feature. I think you're going to see a lot of that in No Kings 3 and headed into July 4th. Leah, other thoughts?
I think that's absolutely right. I think part of the strategy here is claiming the high ground on who is standing for American values right now. I think another part of the strategy, and something that we've seen incredibly effectively deployed across the movement over the last several months, is humor, right?
Yes.
If you think about No Kings, when you went out to your local protest, you saw a lot of American flags, and you also probably saw somebody dressed in a frog costume or a unicorn costume or some other big inflatable whatever was available. And that's an intentional and really important strategy, because fascists try to paint a movement as, a threat in order to justify the next round of political repression. The way that you can pop that bubble, the way that you can deflate that threat illusion is by leaning into humor. And so what we've seen with people who are showing up in frog costumes or unicorn costumes all over the country is that it's actually, it is fun. Who doesn't love that? But it's also part collectively of this strategy of using humor and patriotism to assert what we're for and to assert who we are. We are a powerful, nonviolent movement for democracy across this country. And we're funny.
Y'all, we've hit our time, but want to note that we've been talking a lot about No Kings here. Next week, we will be talking about No Kings 3. That's my little sneak peek that I will give you. Cannot announce it here, but next week, we will be talking about No Kings 3. So next Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, if you're listening to the podcast now and you want to ask a question, the only way to do that is join us on Zoom Live. That's how we do these. You can ask and vote on questions. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you. Spread the word. We're trying to get more people into this movement, because while there are more of us than there are of them, we got to organize. That's how we win. So we need more people in this movement taking on leadership. It's been an honor and a pleasure, y'all. As always, we will see you next week at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, we've got work to do tomorrow. The solidarity events for Minnesota on Friday, and getting in touch with your senators and your representatives on this DHS funding bill. Leah, that's the plan, right?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. We'll see you next week.